Very good.
Hello everyone, my name is Megan MacDonald and I'm here today to present to you my persuasive speech against animal testing. Imagine being taken to a place where you are locked up in a cage, injected with poison and disease, cut open and manipulated without any pain medication, and the only way to leave this place is through your own demise. This is an everyday life of an animal used in laboratory testing. Dogs, cats, rabbits, rats, monkeys, some just like the pets that you have at home, are living these lives filled with isolation and torture. Today I'm here to convince you that testing on animals for medical and cosmetic research is unethical, unnecessary, expensive, and inaccurate. Poisoning, shocking, burning, and killing animals is all in a day's work for scientists that work in laboratory testing. If these brutal acts were committed outside of laboratories, they would be considered felonies. But animals suffer and die every day in laboratories, kept in extremely small cages, scared and alone, and with no protection from cruelty. One test conducted in these labs is called the Drazy Eye Test. This experiment is used to test things like detergents, shampoos, weed killers, and pesticides. The substance is sprayed into a rabbit's eye every day for a week and is watched closely. Normal reactions are swelling, hemorrhaging, discharge, and bleeding, and almost always leads to blindness. This is a form of torture, and these rabbits have to deal with pain and now lifelong complications from the experiment. Another example of a cruel experiment is the lethal dose 50 test, which is done on dogs, rabbits, monkeys, and guinea pigs. This test determines the dosage of a drug, pesticide, or disinfectant that kills 50% of the animals who are administered it. The substance is either forced into their mouths, injected into their veins, or pumped into their stomachs. The test goes on for 14 days if the animal hasn't already died, and the ones that haven't died live with lifelong complications from the experiment. These are just a couple of examples of the many horrendous procedures that are done on animals. Dogs are artificially induced heart attacks, rats are made to suffer seizures, monkey skulls are cut open and electrodes are implanted in them, and cats are infected with disease that they would have never encountered in their normal lives. According to the Humane Society of the United States, these gruesome tests are done without any pain medication or anesthesia in fear of interfering with test results, and have little to no significance when applied to human beings. These animals are treated inhumanely and suffer for no reason due to the fact that animals are just very different from humans. They differ greatly at biological levels, making these tests unreliable and unsafe, which brings me to my next point. According to the Food and Drug Administration, 92 out of every 100 drugs that pass animal tests fail in humans. Biomedical science professor James Hickman said, quote, "We have cured over 200 diseases in rats and mice that haven't translated to humans because our physiology and our basic functions are just very different. The problem is the small little modifiers. The channels and the receptors and cells are just different from ours," end quote. Therefore, what may work in animals may not for humans, and vice versa, making these tests unreliable. This inaccuracy has led to the deaths of thousands of people. For example, in 1999, after countless tests on African green monkeys, an anti-inflammatory drug called Vioxx was approved by the FDA and put out on the market. According to FDA safety researcher David Graham, these tests were used to claim its safety. By 2006, 88,000 Americans who had taken this drug had heart attacks, and 60,000 of them had died, making it the largest drug recall in history. And this is not the only time a drug safe to animals has then been considered safe to humans and put out on the market. Other drugs like Resolin and Propulsid have also caused hundreds of deaths, along with so many others. In addition, genetically engineered disease and artificially created symptoms given to these animals differ greatly from the actual human disease. Humans have longer life expectancies than the majority of non-human animals. We metabolize substances in different ways and are exposed to vastly different environmental factors over the courses of our lives. A few of the variations scientists know about and can take into account for certain tests, but others, like reactions to new drugs or functions of a part of their brains that we haven't discovered yet, in cases like this, the findings of these tests can be completely inaccurate. For example, high blood pressure in obese human patients is associated with increased insulin levels, yet in dogs, increased insulin levels actually lowers blood pressure. But still, dogs are commonly used for research on heart disease, even though their hearts, blood vessels, and circulation is extremely dissimilar to ours. Finally, animal testing is expensive. Every year, the United States spends over $16 billion on animal testing at taxpayers' expense. That is $16 billion that can otherwise be used to provide an immense amount of tax relief for Americans, but instead it is spent on cruel animal testing that isn't even needed. For example, Ohio State University was given $1.9 million to conduct an experiment which forced beagles to run on treadmills until they had heart attacks. And Harvard University was provided $16 million to give cocaine to monkeys and study their reactions. Also, the EPA has given over $400,000 to the National Institutes of Environmental Health Science to conduct the mercury inhalation experiment. It has been known for decades that mercury is harmful to humans and causes reproductive issues, yet these labs are still being funded to carry out these horrific tests on rats, in which they are shoved in what is equivalent to a water bottle, and mercury vapor is pumped into the water bottle. The rats have no choice but to breathe in that air, and toxicologists have admitted that they can't reproduce the effects in the rats as they are in humans. So not only do we already know that it's dangerous in humans, and that rats are so different than humans that it wouldn't even be invalid. It would be invalid. These tests are a complete waste of taxpayers' money. The EPA's apathy towards the suffering of animals is also more apparent by the fact that none of its immense annual research budget is given to develop non-animal tests, which are actually cheaper and more dependable, and also obviously more humane than animal testing. Scientists have already created non-animal research methods that are useful and considerate to all life, like human-based microdosing, human patient simulators, in vitro technology, and state-of-the-art computer modeling. All of these methods are faster, more accurate, and cost less than animal testing, so why aren't we using them? As you can see, animal testing is unreliable, expensive, tormenting, and a complete disrespect to animal life. The world doesn't need another mascara, pesticide, or drug for anxiety so badly that we need to kill innocent creatures for it. Asserting our dominance over another species does not make us look strong and powerful. In fact, it makes us look weak. Just because they cannot say no, just because they are easily taken advantage of, doesn't mean we should treat them as disposable life. They deserve a life without misery just as much as we do, and it's time that we as a society understand that. It's time to let animals out of the world's laboratories. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. She's the Speaker of the House.
Yes, she is. Thank you.